This is Man-at-Arms, Reforged.
Perhaps no blade has been more revered throughout history than the katana. And today we're making the epic Nodachi Sword, a katana-style blade that is used by the Kensei in For Honor, which will be available on February 14th. In For Honor, players can step into a visceral battlefield and fight as some of history's greatest warriors, the Vikings, the Knights, and the Samurai. Any katana-style sword over 30 inches was a Nodachi, which made for a fearsome weapon. The Nodachi that we are making is based on the real swords of the Japanese samurai. In Japanese, samurai translates as those who serve. This meant a samurai dedicated his life to mastering the art of combat in order to defend their master. Legend has it that they took this so seriously that a samurai could neither be born nor die without a sword nearby. Now that is commitment.
Even though this blade is going to be made out of traditional Japanese Tahamagani steel, and that's a pretty big deal, we've shown you that several times, and we usually skip over the fittings pretty quickly. Because we've seen a lot of requests to show more work on the fittings and the fit and finish, we're going to jump right into the hand beveling of the blade and then move on to the highly detailed fittings.
We need some thick masses of copper for some of these fittings. We'll be melting down some copper pipe. It'll go in the crucible, come up over 2000 degrees Fahrenheit, be poured directly into an ingot mold, and then we'll begin forging the ingot to get the sheet we'll be making the tsuba from.
Now that the blade is forged, it's time to start the stock removal portion of this build. I'm just gonna follow the guidelines that Ilya's forged into this blade already, take out a few of the little bumps here and there, and then I'll hand it off to him. He'll get it clayed and heat treated. Because this material is so precious, and we are gonna be quenching it into water, I wanna make sure my edge thickness stays nice and thick, just to play it on the safe side. So you'll notice I'm taking my time and make sure I don't remove too much material.
After annealing, Rick and I begin to drive this ingot down on itself. We'll need to anneal it several times. As it begins to flatten out, it'll give us a better consistency of material that we can cut and form the tsuba from.
It is a tradition in Japanese swords to prefer differential heat treating that is usually achieved by masking off the back of the blade with clay and leaving the edge uncovered. If you notice, there are small lines of clay extending from the back blade to the edge. Those are called ashi lines. The purpose of ashi lines is to introduce smaller regions of softer material extending from the back to the edge. That prevents chipping that might occur during combat.
So we've continued to reduce this ingot down. We have a fair amount of material, and it's much more than what we need. So we're going to keep working this down. We're going to get it down just above 1/4 inch, and then saw pierce and cut out the entire piece for the tsuba. So I'm still mostly doing roughing work, and I'm also doing some grinding, so I'm not going to worry about hammer marks too much.
Now that the clay is nice and dry on the surface of the blade, it's time to heat treat. Since this is really precious material, we are taking a risk going into water, but we really want to show you this. As he removes the blade from the quench, you can see it's gained a lot of curve. It went in straight, it came out just right. Using the template that Ilya gave her, Lauren's now going to lay the design onto our copper disc and then use a saw and pierce it out. Now that the shape is cut out, Lauren's going to go around the entire edge with a file, making a nice clean bevel.
The middle of the handle, the tsuka, has a copper ornament. The game designers executed that in a very Victorian style, so consequently, I'm going to use a set of chisels, first a liner, to outline the design. Then I'm going to use a planishing chisel to push the design back. The pitch, which fills the ornament, is going to push the design up, and at that stage I will rotate to a more finer set of chisels to do all the detail work.
So now we have the copper tsuba finished. The outside edges are all done, the surfaces are just about where they're going to be before we patina. What we've got to do now is we've got to fit it to the blade. We already have a steel tsuba that's fitted to that blade to make sure that we could get this shape right. So what we'll be doing now is we're going to overlay this. I'm going to scratch in the ink the shape of that hole, drill the hole, saw pierce all the way around until it fits, and then we'll do all hand file fit to the blade.
What I have to do now is to produce a horimono, or engraving, on the blade. So here I have a rough outline where my hamon is. The reason why I did that, I want to constantly see how close I am to the hard edge. That way I don't damage neither my tools nor the sword. Here is the rough sketch. I'm going to generally follow the plum blossom motif that you see in the game.
Brass embellishments on the tsuba, I'm going to be punching these brass sections out on this Pepe Tools punching system. What we'll do is we're going to punch them all. See, they're fairly small, they're about a ½ inch. Rather than drilling through and putting rivets, which was a consideration, these are going to be soldered directly onto the piece. So I'm going to punch out 20 of these, there's 10 on each side. I'll clean them up a little bit, put a little solder on them. They'll all get set directly in place where they're going to go. And then we'll come in with a torch, bring the whole piece up to temperature. When the solder sets down, we'll see everything kind of fall into place. Bring it off, let it cool, and it'll be permanent.
According to the samurai code of conduct, or Bushido, the way of the samurai is found in death. This is what helped give them their warrior spirit. A samurai would rather die than fail or be dishonored, and were prepared to do so in every battle. Without a fear of death, a samurai could reach a state of mind known as mushi, or selflessness. They would become one with their blade and give themselves completely to their training, becoming ruthless killers capable of the swiftest combat.
Out of all the fittings that the craftsman makes, the habaki is the only part of the fittings that permanently stays with the blade, while the rest, the tsuba, the fushi, the kashira, the tsuka, minuki, can be all switched around for different occasions. The habaki is crucial as it is a structural piece rather than a decorative one, and is formed specifically to that blade. The way it is done, you stretch out a piece of copper, create 2 offsets on one side and then 1 offset in the back. It is very similar to the way in the West people make axes. At this point, you form it around the tang and then file it, which is what I'm going to do now. All I have to do is rough filing and rough shaping, removing all the hammer marks, and setting up my general form.
Now that he has his surfaces prepared the way he wants for a finish, Ilya can go in and lay in the engraving on the habaki. There are several ways to create a 2-piece or 2-tone habaki. In this case, what we're doing is working directly with the copper and laying 24-karat gold over the back section.
On the habaki, you've seen that Ilya's already engraved this section. We've put some tape over it, both to protect it and to keep it away from the plating solution. Gold plating solution has 24-karat gold directly in it. It'll allow the electricity to flow through, positive or negative here, which is attached directly to the habaki. We're going to be laying this solution down. You'll see it adhere pretty quickly. We'll put on 2 or 3 coats over the entire piece, and then we'll be able to peel this back and see a 2-tone finish. For the kashira, which will also be the pommel for this sword, the entire piece will be raised from a sheet of copper. It'll first be dished from this side, then it'll be raised over a stake. I'll be working around the concentric rings to keep it round. We'll trim it, then Ilya is going to take that piece, it's going to get cut, carved, and fitted over the existing handle. As you can see now, we've gotten quite a bit of height. We've gotten much smaller. This is about the size we're going to be when we're finished. These sides are almost going to be straight on this before we take this piece to be oval, but it'll be only about that big, so I'll keep driving it in and hammering it until that surface is brought all the way in.
Kerry's done raising and planishing the kashira, or the pommel for the sword, and now I'm prepared to engrave it. The kashira on the sword is characteristic of early Tachi kashiras, with a cutout right here. I'm going to engrave the piece first and then cut it out because it's easier for me to hold it with my holding stick right here. If I cut it out first, the piece will start moving and responding way too much to the blows of even this tiny hammer.
Time to move to the mill and carve out the recess, and then we'll file it all to shape later.
Using a small hand hammer on the end of the horn of our anvil, Ilya goes in, upsets the end, drives it back, and rolls it over, creating a bead. Once this is in place, he'll be able to place a plug in the end of the copper to support it, and take a chisel over the edges to create the roping.
Using hand chisels and a mallet, Ilya is going to very carefully carve out the recess for our tang. This is the beginning of the suka. Now that both sides of the handle are recessed, it's time to clamp them together and glue them up. Once they're glued, we move right to the sander and start forming it to shape. First thing you want to do is get your length and width, then you're going to knock the corners and round everything over.
Jen now uses a razor to cut this ray skin. Usually you would see us use a sharp pair of shears or large scissors for something like this. But in this case, this material will destroy the surfaces and edges, so we need to use something disposable.
Now that the second coat of glue is applied, we'll let it dry, then we'll come back and put it together.
The fushi, or the fitting that is closest to the guard on this sword, keeps the handle tight and allows it to be under compression from the makugi pin that holds the entire sword together. I was able to make it quickly from a piece of copper pipe. Once it's to form, Ilya now puts in the serious work.
The last stage in polishing the Japanese sword is to burnish the back and the shinogi-ji. The purpose of burnishing is to close off the natural porosity in the grain of the steel. That produces a rich, dark mirror finish.
Even though this handle is in two pieces, it's going to be the largest handle that John's wrapped for length. He's got to make sure he has just the right amount of cord. He'll take his time, keep everything tight, and lay it all in place. At the very end, it'll be tied into the kashira.
It was said that the ancient Japanese swordsmiths put everything they had into making the perfect weapon, including their very soul. Of course, there's really only one way to test a blade. Until next time, stay sharp. Thanks to For Honor for sponsoring this episode. You can wield the Nodachi and fight for the Kensei in the game, available February 14th. If you want to see the construction of the Knight's Peacekeeper armor featured in this episode's demolition segment, click the box on the right.